Hello everyone, good morning. My name is Revi Tangano. My student number is 22.E1.0168 and I am a psychology student and currently I study at Sogisya Banata Catholic University in Semarang. In this video, I'm going to summarize an international psychology journal to fulfill my grades and my assignment in English for psychology lesson. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so the title of this journal that I find and use for my assignment is Loneliness Around the World, Age, Gender, and Cultural Differences in Loneliness. There are six writers on this journal, namely 1. Manuel Barreto, Christina Victor, Claudia Hermon, Alice Eccles, Matthew Wichins, and Pamela Walter. Okay, the first part of this journal and also the first part of many journal is the abstract. The abstract is basically the summary of the entire journal. So I'm not going to explain or summarize the abstract for you because I'm going to do it later. And the second part of this journal is the introduction. So the introduction tells us that the main topics of this journal is loneliness. And right now, increased attention is currently being paid to loneliness due to improved understandings of the impacts it has on individuals and communities. Loneliness contributes negatively to well-being, healthcare, and economic costs. Understanding what might lead people to feel lonely and what keeps some people stuck in loneliness is crucial for the development of well-targeted successful interventions to prevent and mitigate the effects of loneliness. There are many factors that affect and influence loneliness, such as personality, social skills, demographic, culture, age, gender, resources, physical mobility, and many more. There are three most important past findings on this topic, namely 1. Is loneliness affected by culture? 2. How might age affect loneliness? And 3. Does gender affect loneliness? Past findings have shown that cultural differences in social behavior affects loneliness to some extent. It highlights the differences between individualistic and collectivist cultures, with individualistic cultures emphasizing self-reliance and loose social networks, while collectivist cultures promote interdependence and tighter social networks, dominated by family and in-group members. While research generally suggests lower levels of loneliness in such individualistic cultures compared to collectivist cultures, there are conflicting findings. Methodological complexities in cross-cultural comparisons, including disputes over cultural definitions and sample limitations, contribute to to these discrepancies. Additionally, the text notes the importance of considering age differences in how culture affects loneliness. Okay, the second part is while age also greatly affects loneliness, with many believing that older people are more lonely than kids, adolescents, and young adults. However, some studies have shown to find no significant age differences between loneliness, while others show higher levels of loneliness in younger or older respondents. Additionally, there are mixed findings regarding the pattern of loneliness across the lifespan. And finally, the third and the last is gender differences has been shown to affect loneliness. But they are also varying across age group and cultures. While it's commonly assumed that women are more lonely than men, the evidence in is very mixed because age groups and cultures also affect loneliness, and it is also possible men are more lonely than women in some cultures. Overall, the interaction between age, gender, and culture is important when examining loneliness. So, in this current paper or journal, the authors used the BBC loneliness experiment dataset to examine the effects of culture, age, and gender on loneliness. This is a very large dataset drawn from general population with participants residing in many countries around the world, providing the authors a unique opportunity to examine differences in the experience of loneliness across cultures, age, and gender, and the interaction between these factors. Basically, the authors of this journal saw that past findings on the topic, whether culture, age, and gender affect loneliness, has been inconclusive and inconsistent at best. So, they sought to examine the effects of age, gender, and culture in a much larger and diverse sample than has been done before. Crucially, given the magnitude and demographic diversity of the sample, they are also able to examine the interplay between these factors. Okay, next we move on to the third part of the journal is the method. So participants from countries all around the world, specifically from 237 countries, islands and territories, aged between 16 to 99 years, took part in an online survey launched on BBC Radio 4 and BBC World Services. Participants who were interested could access the study online and were first provided with information about the study. Those who agreed to participate answered a range of questions about their social life and their experience with loneliness. A total of 54,998 people completed the survey, but only 46,054 participants provided the data on the variables of interest. So this paper will only report data from those 46,054 participants. The participants are people from countries all around the world that are listed and included on Hofstede Individualism Index. A number of participants were excluded because their country of residence was not included in Hofstede's database. So basically, the participants are random people who voluntarily took part in an online survey and provided data on their age, gender, and country of residence. What makes them unique is they were drawn from a very large and diverse pool of individuals from countries all around the world. Everyone can feel loneliness, no matter the age, gender, backgrounds, and culture. Because of the diversity of the samples, the authors were able to better see and observe the relationships between loneliness, age, gender, and culture. The sample size of 46,054 participants is quite large, which is advantageous for generalizability, which is very useful because authors want this research to be applicable to many people anytime in many different contexts. Also, the topic of loneliness is a very universal topic that can be felt and applied to pretty much every single human in the world. However, while the sample size is very good and suitable for the research, the sample may not be entirely representative of the entire global populations due to many factors such as language differences, cultural representations, and selection bias. The study is quantitative in nature, meaning it based on statistical analysis. Because the analysis in the paper followed a quasi-experimental design with age, gender, and culture quasi-experimental between participant factors, the authors use statistical analysis or techniques to examine relationships between these variables and loneliness. And next, we move on to the fourth part of this journal, which is the result. So the main findings of the author and the research are that age was negatively associated with loneliness, with older people reporting less frequent loneliness than younger people. Gender was also negatively associated with loneliness, with men reporting more frequent loneliness than women. Individualism was also positively associated with loneliness, with people living in more individualistic societies reporting more frequent loneliness than people living in more collectivistic societies. The results also revealed significant interactions between age and individualism, indicating that loneliness increased with individualism, but this effect was stronger for older people or participants. There was also interactions between age and gender, which showed that loneliness decreased with age for both genders, but with stronger effects for males. And gender differences in loneliness were more pronounced in more individualistic societies, but that effect of culture was stronger for males than females. Overall, the main findings suggest complex interactions between age, gender, and culture in predicting and affecting loneliness. Although age and living in more collectivistic societies were associated with lower levels of loneliness, while being male and living in more individualistic societies were associated with higher levels of loneliness. And then we move on to the next part of this journal, which is the discussion. Overall, the authors of this paper analyzed the frequency of loneliness reported by 46,054 participants aged 16 to 99 years living across 237 countries, islands, and territories all around the world, representing the full range of individualism and collectivism cultures, as defined by Hofstede in 1997. They found that loneliness increased with individualism, decreased with age, and was greater in men than in women. They also found that age, gender, and culture interacted to predict loneliness. However, those interactions did not qualify the main effects. They simply accentuated them. They also found the most vulnerable to loneliness were younger men living in individualistic cultures. The author's findings or the results of this paper or journal are important because these findings provide new insights about how culture moderates the effects of age, gender, to predict experiences of loneliness. They thus are of importance for those who wish to develop public policy surrounding loneliness and or design interventions for loneliness. The authors also identify some limitations of the study, such as non-representative sample, which means that the sample used in the study is not representative of the broader population. Instead, it consists only of individuals who are willing to express their feelings of loneliness. It is, however, important to note that even though the sample is not representative of the population of the respective countries, contrary to prior research, the 237 countries sampled in here are representative of the full spectrum of individualism versus collectivism cultures. The next limitation is that the study relies on cross-sectional data, which limits the ability to draw casual inferences. The study also has a very limited generalizability because while the study includes participants from a large number of countries, the vast majority of participants resided in individualistic cultures and countries, particularly in the UK or the United Kingdom, where loneliness has been a focus of discussion in the media. And other than that, the effects observed in the study are very small, and the study may suffer from self-selection bias. However, despite these limitations, the study still provides valuable insight into how culture moderates the effects of age, gender to predict the experiences of loneliness. So, the last part of the journal, the conclusion. In conclusion, this journal and this study sheds light on the complex relationships between age, gender, and culture in shaping experiences of loneliness. The study also found that while loneliness are more commonly associated with older people, younger people can also experience significant levels of loneliness as well, especially in more individualistic cultures. The study also showed gender difference in loneliness, with men reporting significantly higher levels of loneliness than women. And lastly, the study also revealed the effect and importance of culture on loneliness, with individualistic cultures possessing higher levels of loneliness compared to collectivistic cultures. Alright, so that's all for my presentation and summary of this International Psychology Journal. I hope you all enjoy my presentation and summary. Thank you and see you next time.